We are going to dive in a little bit to this idea of what the Connecticut Sun sold for, or maybe sold for, since we're not quite sure what Kathy Engelbert is doing. Go check out that video if you haven't. But what I want to talk about is another angle on this because I've seen this around a few times, and now we've got it published in Sports Illustrated, which is a rather large platform. So I want to talk about this a little bit because, of course, we are seeing that, oh, well, that they can sell the franchise for this much, one franchise, then these players should be getting a lot more money. Connecticut Sun sale situation proves WNBA players deserve significant pay raise. You will be shocked, I tell you, that I'm going to take a different angle on this. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for being here. Appreciate all your support. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Shout out to the 19. Here is the deal. As you know, Connecticut Sun maybe just sold for $325 million. Again, pending approval, of course. Nothing is done deal. Like without the league board of governors, which Kathy Engelbert decided not to bring this to, and the month-long time frame for doing so has expired. But anyway, I already went through that in another video. And now we're saying, well, that massive price tag for the franchise proves the players deserve a lot more money. However, hold up, back up, pump the brakes, chill out, relax just a little bit. Not so. So let's talk about why franchise values like that shiny $325 million Sun deal have nothing to do with player salaries. Nothing to do with player salaries. In general, do franchises with huge valuations pay more because they're in bigger leagues and they generate more revenue? Yes, but there is not a connection directly to franchise values, and it is not proof that players need more money because that is not revenue in any way, shape, or form. Owners are not swimming in massive profits in the WNBA or even revenues. If we want to, people will say, oh, well, you can't tell about profits. Okay, but the revenues are very tiny, which you can talk about. So grab your popcorn. This is going to be a ride through sports economics, just a little bit of sarcasm as well. I try and bring that too. And we're even going to talk about MLS as a good example as to what this means for comparison. So let's go. Connecticut Sun, 325 million. You got all that, blah, blah, woof, woof. Now, for context, and this is important, the last WNBA team sold, I believe, was the Atlanta Dream in 2021 for, wait for it, $10 million. So in 4 years, as we all know, thank you, Caitlin Clark. That is like going from a used, totaled Honda to a gold plated, I was going to say Tesla, but ever since Elon did that expenses thing, that seems like a dangerous thing to go with. So how about Mercedes? Can we say Mercedes, or is that going to get me in trouble? But and doing that in 4 years. But here's the kicker. As we know, the Connecticut Sun, not exactly the Golden State Warriors, the LA Lakers, the Boston Celtics of the WNBA. Think what they're lost their entire starting lineup last year to free agency and trades. I think they're 5-21. They play in this really tiny arena that's more community gym than Madison Square Garden. There was that thing going around last year with the playoffs with the Indiana Fever about how they were practicing in only half a gym because they had to share it. I think Forbes at one point recently said they're worth about 200 million. Some bankers think even that's just, a little too generous given their financials. So why is someone paying 325 million for a team that's not exactly printing money? We are going to unpack it like it is a bad trade. Here's where things get a little weird. Sports teams like the Connecticut Sun are not your average business. If the Sun were, I don't know, a coffee shop or a tech startup, you'd look at their revenue, right? You look at their real financials, their revenue about 12.9 million last season, I believe, cash flow, profitability, all that stuff, and go 325 million. You must be joking. In no universe would 325 million be the value of this franchise. It's like paying $1 billion for a lemonade stand that sells $10 worth of juice a day. For sure. Now, unlike Walmart trying to crush Target or vice versa, Apple and Microsoft, whatever it might be. Sports teams are a little different because they are not out to bankrupt each other. They are not out to put each other out of business. They're more like frenemies in a weird cooperative club called the league. Fans are mostly local. Not all people have, obviously Kate and Clark and Indiana Fever are an example, but fans are mostly local. Obviously, it's local fans that are going to games. Again, I know the Fever are probably the biggest exception, except other than the Philadelphia Eagles and the Philadelphia Phillies. But mostly, if you're cheering for the Connecticut Sun, that's your team in your area, just like I'm a Philly guy, right? Not because they're the cheapest or they have the best mascot, or I mean, I don't know. Some people might make that decision on the mascot. That can definitely help. But franchise values aren't tied to profits the way a normal business is. Instead, they're driven by scarcity for one, hype for another, and just the social, to use the term now with what's going on in this tech age and the internet, we'll say a social credit value as well, right? Being involved in owning a sports franchise. Look, there are only 13 WNBA teams in the world, soon to be 18, which is also very, very small. And the league growing again. Thank you, Caitlin Clark. But right now, the WNBA is at a moment where people are throwing cash at teams like it's some Black Friday sale. Owning a pro sports franchise is a very small, very exclusive club. It's similar to the insane money that Caitlin Clark cards are going for, right? Especially the one of one and the Caitlin Clark signing it. The exclusivity, the scarcity of that card drives up the value. I mean, it's a little piece of cardboard. We could make one for a few cents if we wanted to make another one, go to a game and get Caitlin Clark to sign it, but it is not that one of one card. No matter how much money you have, you may very well never get into this tiny, tiny club of owning a sports franchise. But if you do have that money or you can get the investors because you've got a great business plan, you can start any kind of business you want. That is why valuations go crazy. So let's talk a little bit about a comparable league, Major League Soccer, MLS, because it's having its own moment, right? It's gone through a lot of expansion lately. Soccer is, it's not like Europe, of course, or other places in the world, but it's taken more of a foothold in the United States. It has grown just like the WNBA and MLS, because the soccer has never not been traditionally a big American sport. Even on the men's side, it's kind of had a lot of the issues and the growth and situation that the WNBA has had as well. And their teams right now are valued way above their financials. For example, I believe the average MLS franchise value is about $600 million, but their revenue often less than 50 million a year. Just to run through really quick, if I have it right, we can look. LAFC 1.25 billion is is their valuation of on only 150 million in revenue, on only 12 million in operating income. New York City FC, $875 million valuation for the franchise, actually lost $8 million this past season. Columbus Crew valued at 735 million, lost 10 million this year. Outside of Inter Miami, because of Lionel Messi right now, none of these teams have an operating income of more than 10 million. But these 10 teams you're showing right here, valuation $730 million and up. There are only so many teams to go around. Expansion teams, that's where MLS has been making its money, the league. And you can only do that for so long. WNBA, be warned. I believe San Diego FC, which just joined, paid to join this year, their expansion fee, $500 million. It's not because they're raking in profits. It's because of the things we just talked about with scarcity, the coolness factor, the social credit, and of course betting on future growth. Because if these team valuations continue to go above and beyond the revenue and profit, you can flip it for a tidy sum. You're not doing it as an investment to get a certain amount of money each year, because there are far safer investments that pay more. Again, I mentioned Inter Miami when Messi joined, their value skyrocketed, but again, not swimming in cash from ticket sales and revenue alone in terms of the media rights deals and all that. And the WNBA is in that situation right now. I think the newest expansion teams announced, well, what, Detroit, Philly, was the other one? Oh man, I'm blanking. I want to say Cleveland or Cincinnati that paid. I think there were those that group that the last group that paid like 250 million in fees to get into it. But again, the point being that does not mean that there's extra cash just sitting around for player salaries. LAFC and the teams with similar valuations. Let's check these out. I think I have these here, right? These are worldwide, but just to give you an example of the name and so forth, and how valuation has other aspects because AC Milan 1.5 billion, LAFC 1.25, they're similar. AC Milan's revenue 433 million, LAFC only 150 million. And then we even go below Inter Miami 1.2 billion right now, their revenue only 180 million. Inter Milan 1.15 billion, slightly less than LAFC, but their revenue 430 million. The same thing, West Ham 1.125 billion, 349 million in revenue. Now there are other numbers, but I just wanted to quickly give you some examples of how that can look and how the valuations of these teams can be out of whack. So some owners, they have the money to spend. They love the idea of owning a sports franchise, like I said, exclusive club. Others may be looking to flip. They're not doing it for the ongoing yearly income that they can get. They're looking to flip it for a tidy sum, sort of like house flipping, which of course also has bigger risk when you're doing that. Now, again, the juicy part, player salaries. 325 million Sun deal proves players deserve bigger paychecks. Respectfully, that's like saying I deserve a yacht because my neighbor's house sold for $1 million, right? It doesn't make sense. I know it's kind of a weird example, but it popped into my head. But franchise values are about what someone's willing to pay, not what the team is earning. You know, real quick, completely out of left field just popped in my head. I think when was it when the original tech boom with the internet exploding was what, back around the turn of the century, right? Like it was in 98 to 2001, something like that. And all these companies that couldn't even show how they were ever going to turn a profit, that weren't turning a profit, that were losing lots of money, that were internet only. And they had these huge, huge stock valuations. And people were buying the stock and driving it up on the speculation that it's going to go up and they're going to flip that stock for a tidy profit. But there was nothing in the financials of the company that would say you should give all the employees 5 times what they're earning. It's just absolutely absurd. It's a complete disconnect from reality. And player salaries, they're coming from revenue, ticket sales, sponsorships, the media rights deal. So again, player salaries should go up in the WNBA, but the sale of a franchise for a lot of money is not connected, and it doesn't prove anything about player salaries. That is not a connection that you can make. And if the players try and make that, they will get laughed at by the league. Now, again, the new media rights deal starting next season, that's going to boost revenue, obviously, and players are going to, I'm sure, get a piece of that. It's complicated. We'll see how it shakes out, but I will say, just looking at what the league's making now and that media rights deal, yes, the players should get more. How much more, how much of revenue and all that is, the devil's in the details, as they say. But that's where salary increases are coming from. That's the reality. Things like media rights deals. It's not going to come from some rich guy or gal's willingness to overpay to own a sports franchise. Franchise value isn't some magic ATM. That's not actual money. That is not actual money. Anyone who's ever collected anything knows that. Whether it's old baseball cards or your house, what the value of it is, or some piece of art, it is nothing unless you can actually get a buyer to give you that money. There is no ongoing revenue stream in there. And look, who was it? Steve Pagliuca, who shelled out the money for or maybe we'll see how it goes. If he wanted a safe return, a good return, he'd buy some boring bonds and generate a lot of money every year off of $325 million. So the real game there is the resale value that has nothing to do with player salaries. Again, I mentioned the Atlanta Dream. They were bought for 10 million in 2021. I believe they're recently valued by Sportico at $165 million. So think about that. If you were the one or the investor group that bought the Atlanta Dream 4 years ago, that's like what, 1,550% increase or something like that. So a lot of owners, they're betting in a few years that they can flip the franchise that they invested in for much more money. Again, like flipping a fixer upper house. Obviously, there's a lot more risk. And you have things like cheerleaders and stuff like that. And there are, fringe benefits to owning sports franchises. And WNBA right now is obviously in everybody's mind. Viewership's up, like there's a whole lot going on. It's a risky bet, but the upside is huge, but it is not connected to player salaries and simply does not prove anything. It is not a blank check for player salaries. Franchise values are driven by hype. They're driven by scarcity. They're driven by social credit points, for a lack of a better way to phrase that. They're valued by by wanting to flip it for a lot more money. So anyway, you can't tie player salaries to franchise values. It doesn't prove that players deserve more money. I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Appreciate you so much for checking out this video. As always, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. Go have the day you deserve. I will talk to you later.